Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. Jerri, there's something to celebrate today.
I know, we've hit a real milestone.
We have
150 episodes.
Can't believe it. 150 episodes. So how long? It's been 4 years. Just over 4 years.
Today.
Yeah.
And just about this time of year too.
It was. It's like exactly 4 years. That's right.
Yeah, exactly 4 years. And the whole idea came out of COVID, a silver lining, right? That people didn't have the opportunity to talk or meet about educational problems of practice and what was going on. And if ever there was a time that people needed to be connected or linked up, better word, right?
Linked up.
It was then. And so that's how the whole thing got started.
Yeah.
But my goodness.
I know.
And it's going great. I think we hired a person to help us with social media, and she told us we had 1,000 more followers in the last couple of months. So things are just getting better and better and better.
I know. You'd think it would plateau after doing this for 4 years, right? So we started in August of 2020. But no, I think, that was a pandemic. Now we're in a revolution, AI revolution.
Yes.
So there's always some type of boundaries being broken for us to be sharing. So I think that's really fantastic. And what we've done over the past 4 years is we realized that our podcasts fall into different themes. So our themes of building relationships and cultural responsiveness, collaboration, what else? SEL. Student engagement, right? Ed challenges. We've divided up all of our podcasts within those themes. And what I love is that we offer free CEU credit for every 3 that people are able to listen to or watch within a theme. And it's a really special thing. So check our show notes so you can access that. Yeah, it's great. It's a nice way for us to do a retrospective journey like we did, looking back at our 149 episodes.
Secret sauce. There is a secret to all this. And I'll tell you what it is. It is that we work with educators and we work with rock star educators.
We do.
More than that, they are willing to share. Yep. We don't pay them to come on the podcast.
No.
They do that out of the goodness of their heart. And I think it speaks highly about the profession that we're in.
It's true.
That really, at the end of the day, it's all about the kids and making education the best it can be.
You're right.
It's a secret sauce.
You're right. I agree. I love it. So that's what we did. We looked through a variety of different podcasts within each theme. And so now we have a compilation of all of those. So I'm looking forward to taking a look at it all together.
Yes. So let's have a look.
All right.
I knew family engagement was important. So we would send home the team that I was on. We would send home a s'more every single day, and it had pictures, and we put at least, I'd say 20 minutes a day into it, 15 to 20. But it was worth it. The parents loved it. It helped the parents kind of feel like they were at least a fly on the wall, right? And part of what really motivated me was I wanted to know the parents, but I couldn't really. And if I think about it now, I taught 2,000 kids. How many of their parents did I actually know? It should be all of them, right? And not just, conferences are one thing, but those are pretty scripted. Like people come in, you sit down, and it could be student-led, but there's not time for connection, really.
And when it comes to mattering is unique against all others, like self-esteem. That's not mattering, right? Belonging is not mattering. That's about connection. Belonging is about significance. Am I cared for? Will people miss me if I'm not here? So it goes way beyond belonging. And mattering is aligned with all indicators of our mental health and well-being. In fact, if we think about our experience of mattering, I think almost every single human being I have either been on the therapeutic journey with as a therapist or as a teacher, it all came down to this. Like, do I matter? Does this work even matter? And I think a lot of teachers are asking that question right now. A lot of people in the workplace are asking, does this even matter? And so there's this sense of like, does it matter? Does the work matter? Do I matter? And then like, am I valued, but can I offer value here? What value am I contributing? And so in that sense, like, mattering is this double-edged sword, because they're also, mattering and not mattering are not the same or opposite, polar opposites on the same continuum. Like, if you matter, you know it, right? Like, you're like, oh yeah, I matter here, like a high level of mattering. If you don't matter, you know that too.
Right, right.
A sixth grade teacher convinced my parents to take me out of the public school system of Hawaii and put me in a college prep system because she saw my potential. And fortunately for me, my parents listened to her, and fortunately they were willing to make the sacrifice. So I got into this college prep school, which got me into Stanford, and the rest is history. That's where I met the guy who hired me at Apple. So I am living testimony to the impact that one sixth grade teacher can have, and the impact that parents who appreciate the value of education can have.
And it's not being afraid of humbling yourself and saying, I don't know how to draw this on the board, but I'm going to draw it anyway. Because as soon as you put a visual on the board, we know this already, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. 1,000 words. You can be so much more efficient if you just drew it to me. And remember, it's not like I'm not judging you for your creative ability, which is sometimes the resistance that we feel when we say, I can't go near design thinking. We're not looking for your artistic ability. We're looking to get on the same page. We're looking so that when I draw that circle in 2 lines, we can all agree that we're talking about this kind of bird. We're not talking about a penguin. We're talking about this kind of bird.
In the first edition, it was really targeted to an individual teacher. How do you change what you do in the classroom? But what we found is that there's a lot of need to have system-wide change, right? The site administrator or district administrator, I can't have just one teacher using these practices. I've got to have my entire system using them in a coherent way. So I added another chapter based on our experiences in different systems about how you lead this work to get system-wide grade change, and the coherence in the grading practices more equitable and consistent.
Right. Well, I think I talked to students about this. One of the talks I did at Google and other places is this idea of, how do we attract a new worker? What are the perks we need to be thinking about? So I actually talked to some of my students about this to see what was on top of mind for them. And one of the key issues and one of the drivers of me writing this book is the idea of seeking wellness. We have, and what sort of got me was, we have the highest rates in the college now, in not just at USC, but across the nation I'm talking about, of anxiety and depression amongst young people that we've seen in 30 years. And, frankly, as someone who has a master's and PhD in counseling, it concerns me. And so I that's part of the driver of writing that book. It's like, what changed? What has changed where now we're at that level? Something happened. It didn't just suddenly out of nowhere. Well, social media happened.
I truly believe system change, from everything I've learned and everything I've studied, includes narrative shifts. If you think about movements to change anything, it is so much about changing the narrative that is so to be something that is more future looking, that is more about the impact. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to do in Elevate Teaching. It is not a temporary campaign, but it is a movement to change the way we talk about, view, and relate to the teaching profession, to include the tremendous impact that the profession is having in our society and in the world, for that matter. And we somehow have sort of forgotten that in a lot of ways.
What role do I play in supporting my students? How are they using AI? Newsflash, if they have internet access at home, they've already been using it. So rather than hide it, hey, what's something cool you've done with it that isn't school related? Do you see how it might be helpful for you here? Do you see how it's another resource? Do you see how it can augment your learning, not compromise your learning? You see, these are the conversations that we need to be having. And then I would even ask, are there any good ways that you're using it? And then how might we utilize those in the context of learning here? How might you share those with your classmates? Like, be transparent about that stuff. That's what I would do. I've done that with focus groups with kids where I'm like, have you all found any cool ways to use it? Oh yeah, I did this for blank. I did this for blank. That's awesome. How might that work in a science class?
5-6 years ago, I had a conversation with a superintendent at the time in Mequon Schools, which is one of the suburbs outside of Milwaukee. And we were sharing ideas about doing something with Black males, something empowering, uplifting. And after going back and forth and him working with his colleagues there in Milwaukee, they decided in partnership with Concordia University in Milwaukee that they would do the African American Male Initiative. And this is a 3 to 4 day program that engages young Black men in academic and instructional support. They get mentoring opportunities, there's community engagement, and a host of other things to help them basically transition into becoming both college and career ready.
If you get feeds and notifications, and when your phone goes ding, you look at it and get angry, that's a bad feed. That's a poisonous feed. It's triggering you to be angry. And so I shut them all off. I shut them all off during COVID. And then I started really intentionally subscribing to positive story of the day here, positive meme quote here. I started feeding my soul with better food. Now, can I still get mad or animated if something in the world feels wrong to me? Of course. Do I live there every minute? No, no more. And I don't want kids to either. You know, I think the future is going to be designed by people who find their way, who can move through the chaos and operate. I tell kids, don't get down in the foxhole and fight. Fly over the battlefield. Look at the generals on the hill. They don't get shot. They're running this show. Be bigger than the moment, right? Don't get pulled into the moment. Just, you know, zen this thing, right? You can do that.
But one of the tips was just being yourself, being happy with who you are, and not trying to change for anyone else. Yeah, and I know I always talk about my mom, we always do, but my mom always tells me home team advantage, like you have to cheer for yourself. So definitely start like being okay with yourself and loving yourself first before taking any big steps.
Oh, I love that. Sounds like you have some pretty smart moms.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think what we've seen right now in education over the past few years, and I know you both do a lot in the ed tech space too, is we've seen this move from consumption to creation, which is great. Like, how are we getting our students to create, to share their stories, to research? For me, it's this next level from consumption to creation to taking action. How can they take action in a real way that is not just a scenario, but it's something that they can build on over time? The teacher's there to co-create with them. We're all figuring it out right now. So we're learning together, and it's just, I'm constantly learning and growing too. And it's just been really just such an exciting time to be a teacher.
Again, you know, when I'm coaching football or wrestling, my kids in esports are having the same learning experience, even though they're playing a digital game rather than a game that's more physical. And then, yeah, so Nate and I do know each other, and we definitely want to give a plug for where we met. Nate and I are both Scholastic Fellows for the North American Scholastic Esports Federation. And so they're a fantastic organization who are doing work on a global level when it comes to bringing esports to the classrooms. And so Nate and I, who had programs, you know, were tapped by NASEF to come aboard and really help mobilize the United States. And since then, they've brought in Mexico and England and a bunch of different countries. And so it's definitely an international movement. Nate and I are, you know, super excited to be part of that. And yeah, so we know each other pretty well.
They have to understand their own implicit bias. So when you look at a name, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're looking at a name of let's say a gentleman who's 59 years old, and he's applying for a tech coach position. There's a huge bias there already. Why? Because he's 59 years old, and let's say a woman, 59 years old and a tech coach. We see tech and young people. We don't see tech as older people. So that's like we have that bias like in there in our head without even knowing it. And so how do you undo that when you're already saying, I'm going to push that application aside without even properly looking at it because of ageism.
Right.
And so
Very much so.
Yeah, so very much so. So it's really, you have to raise making the unconscious conscious. So in order to do that, you have to practice.
Within an organization or within a community, it's important to think about leadership and setting the tone. In a school, I think that teachers, principals and other administrators play an incredible role trying to model what they wish to see in the students. So, it's not just students, it can also be teachers, right? We've all had the experience of feeling triggered, of getting really upset, not knowing what to do, wondering if we need to protect ourselves by hitting the abort button in a conversation, by yelling at someone, or by fleeing, right? And so I wonder if there's a modeling opportunity where maybe more teachers or this person could show other teachers how to do this, can begin to talk about their own experiences, their own journey of, there was one time that I heard something and I thought, oh, and I made this judgment and I saw the harm that came to me. And then I told myself, wait, don't be so sure. Is that what that person meant? Right. And I asked myself, what am I missing? And then I asked a question, or I approached it curiously. Yeah. And what I learned was that maybe it wasn't what I thought it was, or maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Or I just sat down and talked with that person. And I think we have some work to do, but it's been really eye-opening.
I live in a poor community, and I'm stealing to eat. And the shop owner can then take that information and co-create a solution. Okay, I understand that this young person is hungry and that's the reason why they're stealing from me. They're not just a bad kid. What is it that I can do to support this young person? And that may look like the young person coming, after school, taking out garbage, sweeping up, right? Helping unload boxes, different things, right? To pay back, right? Take accountability for the thing that they've done, but that also gives a shop owner an opportunity to understand their community a little bit better, right? And they understand, like, listen, I'm not the only, this is not the only kid who's been stealing from me, right? I maybe have 10 offenders in a month, right? Maybe there's a bigger issue going on here. How can I utilize my spot in this community to create change?
The books that I have really go through a lot of resilience strategies, but also recognizing that we, as a ecosystem, all have a responsibility for educator mental health. The community and how they support educators has a responsibility. The leadership has a responsibility for both themselves and the educators to take things off their plates. One of the things that had really been weaponized during the pandemic was the idea of self-care, and so making sure that things are being taken off from teachers' plates so they have the ability to practice self-care. We have very giving people in these organizations. They're not going to do the things for themselves unless it's the only thing they have to do, right?
One example I put in the book was really around was like Tim Cook's response for Apple. And I didn't want to overly focus on Apple because everybody does, right? But his response around the social unrest was awesome. It's a model for every leader. He went around and talked to everybody, people who looked different than he did, so he can get a unique perspective. People had a completely different job, one that he never had, but in his organization. And he able to kind of hear those insights. And it helped him frame a response that I thought was a genius memo that was advertised all over the world. And it showed that he was a true listening leader. And he was able to capture their insights and show that the changes he was going to make in his organization were a result of their voices. And that's exactly what everybody has to do.
In recent years, like I said, the past 15 years or so, we know that rates of suicidal thoughts and behaviors have increased among teenagers and increased pretty significantly. And of course, we also know during that same period of time, something else has increased, which is the use of social media. But unfortunately, right now, there still is not enough research, I think, to draw that kind of causal link, like to really say that social media is causing that increase. What we're finding so far is more that it's less about kind of how much time teens are spending on social media, and it's really more about both who they are, so the individual teens themselves and maybe what vulnerabilities or strengths they bring in, and then what they're doing online. So what kinds of behaviors and experiences are they having on social media? So those are really the things that researchers now are trying to focus on more than the kind of screen time overall measures.
So they developed a very simple program called hiragana. One simple symbol for each sound in Japanese. And they organized them in these columns that were similar to each other, similar sounds. So they said, here's the chart. Every morning when you wake up, do your writing of these characters and sounding them. And then when you go out in your day, find them everywhere underneath the kanji. They live under the kanji. And then at night, before you go to bed, do the same thing. So every day I did this, and I could recognize more and more sounds, more and more kanji with the hiragana under it. By the end of the week, I could read everything.
By the end of the week,
I could read everything I saw by the end of the week.
I think the biggest goal is, I'll have to start off with saying that the goal is not about the tools. It's not about what edtech tool we're using at that time. The biggest goal is to form this PLF, right? You hear the term PLN, but
Right.
Ours is a family. And so it's a true family. It's to build the community. And that's what we've seen is the PLF has just grown and grown. And at the end of the day, we're about encouraging everybody to support each other.
I mean, Jerri, that's just fantastic. It makes me so proud that we were able to bring all of these people together to showcase their expertise, their journey. It really is such a special thing. And we need to thank all of our amazing guests throughout these past 4 years, these past 149 episodes. We need to thank them. They've been phenomenal. And you know what? I consider these people friends now after all this time. I really do.
And we've met them in person as well, even though we record virtually. Every time we go to a conference, we have a meetup. And they come, and it's so fun to meet them, have them connect with other people that have been on the podcast. And it really has been wonderful. And not only have the guests been wonderful, but our listeners as well. We appreciate the people that take the time to listen. And I think that they do get value because our guests are really incredible.
I know. It's true. I mean, and like you mentioned earlier, we just keep getting more followers on LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, even Instagram. We get more subscribers on YouTube, and watching our numbers, our analytics on all of our podcast platforms. It's really been such a joy. So if you're not already following or subscribing, please do so and join us as we continue to learn in the next 150 episodes to follow.
That's right. But before we leave, we have to give a huge shout out to the people behind the scenes.
Yep.
And let's start with Marvin. He does such a great job as our producer. We have ClassLink employees like Kayla that help us behind the scenes with some of the things that need.
And Matt does our webpage. Yep.
Matt does our webpage. Kaylin does our social media. And Jasmine helps us with our blogs.
Our blog posts.
This is something that really speaks to what this is all about.
Yeah.
Being linked up, right? Being connected, because it takes all of us to make this happen. And so appreciative of all those people. They are truly rock stars, and they're so helpful. And it's just been a wonderful journey.
It's been wonderful.
The next 150, I can't imagine.
I know.
Pandemic and AI, two huge things. What possibly could be next?
What's next? I know. And it's also so important to also mention that ClassLink, we work for ClassLink. This isn't about ClassLink. And I just think it's such a wonderful thing that ClassLink has sponsored this, continues to sponsor this, because ClassLink considers themselves partners in education. So it's really a blessing that this keeps going.
That's right. And we don't know what the next 150 will bring, but we're here for it.
We're here for it.
Yes.
Bring it on.
Oh, and thank you, Jamie. You are a great partner. It's so fun to work with you.
Oh my gosh, Jerri. I mean, it's really been amazing to be able to work with you, become such a close friend with you, and it's just a blessing. So
it really
love
is.
you.
Love you.
All right. Congratulations to us.
Yes.
150. Looking forward to more.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.